When I pulled into the cul-de-sac that October afternoon, I expected nothing more than to check the gutters on my parents' old house and stack some firewood for the coming cold. What I didn't expect was the woman standing in my driveway like a sentry. She had a clipboard tucked under her arm, a glossy badge that read Pinecrest Homeowners Association, and eyes sharp enough to cut glass. "You're trespassing," she snapped, before I even put the truck in park. "I live here." I shot back, a little too defensive, as if I needed to justify being on the property I'd inherited. Her lips twisted into a smile that wasn't a smile at all. Not for long. Her name was Elaine Rowe, the HOA president. I'd heard whispers about her before, neighbors grumbling about her obsession with rules, her midnight inspection walks, her uncanny ability to know people's private business. But none of that prepared me for the folder she cracked open in front of me. Inside were photos of my living room, my kitchen, my bathroom sink with my toothbrush lying across the porcelain. Interior shots. Impossible shots. "How did you get these?" I demanded, the air freezing around me. "I've been monitoring this property for violations," she said in the flat, bureaucratic tone of someone reading a grocery list. "This house has been out of compliance for years. Structural alterations, landscaping infractions, and most importantly, fraudulent ownership tracing back to your father." She flipped another page, and I saw copies of bank statements, divorce documents from 2 years ago, even the notes from the therapist I'd seen when I thought my marriage was falling apart. My pulse spiked. Someone had drilled into my private life with surgical precision. Elaine wasn't just citing violations, she was laying siege. And she wasn't alone. The HOA voted unanimously, she continued, to reclaim Pinecrest's integrity. "You have 30 days to vacate." I tried to laugh, but it came out thin. "You can't take my family's house because you don't like the paint color." Her eyes glittered. "Ask your sister, Mara. She understands responsibility better than you." I froze. Mara had been avoiding my calls for weeks, claiming she was busy. Now I knew why. Elaine slid into a black Lexus idling at the curb. As the engine purred, she leaned out the window. 30 days, Alex. But you won't need all that time." The car rolled away, leaving me staring at my own front porch like it was already someone else's. The betrayal spread like wildfire. That evening, I called my business partner Chris to tell him what had happened. He showed up 20 minutes later, pale and sweating, and before he even said a word, I knew. "You talked to her," I said. He stammered something about market research and community surveys, but then he showed me his phone. 6 months of payments for Rowe Property Services, LLC. $3,000 total. He'd sold her details about me, my schedule, my finances, my clients, for less than the price of a used motorcycle. Before I could rip into him, my phone buzzed. An email from our largest client. "Concerns have arisen regarding your eligibility for ongoing contracts. Meeting Monday to discuss suspension." My throat went dry. "What did you tell her about our contracts?" Chris looked like he might puke. "She said it was for background checks." I didn't think. "You didn't think at all," I snapped. Then his phone chimed. A text from an unsaved number. I yanked it out of his hand. "Has Alex seen the employment fallout yet? If not, accelerate the timeline." Elaine was monitoring us in real time. By the end of the night, 2 more clients had suspended contracts. My company was gutted. I called Rebecca, a lawyer I'd leaned on during my divorce. She arrived with a recorder and a folder of harassment statutes. When I showed her the photos, the emails, and Chris's payment records, she went pale. "Alex," she said quietly, "this isn't a normal HOA overreach. This is coordinated surveillance. Whoever's behind this has training." We filed complaints, thinking we'd go on the offensive. For 3 days, I let myself believe we had the upper hand. Then the county mailed me a fine. $9,200 for code violations, and a referral to the State Housing Board for ownership fraud. Elaine had used my own complaint as a lever, turning it into official scrutiny. That night, my phone rang. Elaine's voice was syrupy, smug. "My daughter processed your file before resigning. The referral is already in motion. You'll be seeing state and federal investigators soon. She coughed, then added almost cheerfully, 3 months left to live, Mr. Carter. That's more than enough to finish you. I stood in my kitchen, knuckles white around the phone. A dying woman had weaponized the HOA, the county, and even my business partners against me. I couldn't stand the silence with Mara anymore. I drove to her townhouse unannounced. She opened the door like a prisoner caught sneaking out of her cell. "You've been meeting with Elaine," I said flatly. Her face crumpled. "I thought if I helped, I could protect us." She said she only wanted the truth. On her table lay a manila folder. Inside, copies of Dad's old deeds, survey maps, even his private journals, family history laid bare for an enemy. "You gave her this?" My voice cracked. I thought transparency would stop her, but the worst wasn't the documents, it was the notes. Mara's handwriting describing me. Avoids confrontation, retreats under stress, financially unstable since divorce, a psychological profile. My own sister had armed Elaine with a manual on how to break me. Before I could speak, her phone buzzed. I grabbed it, an email chain. Elaine instructing Mara on how to guide Alex towards settlement. "You've been reporting on me," I whispered. Mara's tears were real, but they didn't matter. I walked out before the anger consumed me. That night, I tore through Dad's old maps myself. The original boundary markers stretched far wider than I'd realized, covering not just our house, but several others, including Elaine's. Something in me snapped. I grabbed a GPS unit and hiked the property lines with the cold mountain wind cutting into my skin. And that's when I found them. Fresh survey stakes, poured in new concrete, 6 months old at most. They didn't match Dad's maps. They didn't even line up with the terrain properly. Someone had moved them. Elaine hadn't just been spinning stories. She'd paid to falsify evidence. I photographed everything. Every stake, every GPS coordinate, every chunk of fresh cement. By dawn, Rebecca was at my side. She examined the photos, then looked at me with fire in her eyes. "She tampered with federal markers. That's a felony." 2 days later, the HOA called a community meeting. Word had spread. Property disputes, investigations, potential seizures. Neighbors packed into the rec center, whispering and staring. Elaine arrived with her oxygen tank in tow, frail but regal, like a queen about to pronounce sentence. People brought her coffee, tucked her into a chair at the front. She stood and spoke with the calm of someone certain she'd already won. The Carters' claim on Pinecrest rests on fraud. Their patriarch deceived widows, falsified deeds, and enriched himself at the expense of this community. She held up brittle papers that looked convincingly ancient. "It is time for justice." Satellite images filled the screen. Fresh disturbances in the soil. Boundary stakes moved dozens of feet from their original positions. Next came my GPS data, overlaid with Dad's maps. The conclusion was undeniable. "These markers were altered within the last year," Williams said evenly. "By order of the Pinecrest HOA president, Elaine Rowe." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Someone muttered, "She lied." Williams pressed on. "Mrs. Rowe's property lies entirely on Carter land. According to the original grant, she has occupied it illegally for 15 years. Evidence tampering of this kind constitutes a serious offense." Elaine's face drained of color. She tried to stand, but the oxygen tubing tangled around the chair. Papers slipped from her hands, scattering across the floor. She stumbled, knees hitting the tile, clawing at maps while neighbors recoiled. The sight was surreal. A woman who had orchestrated a campaign of terror reduced to crawling through torn documents, her narrative collapsing in front of 40 witnesses. Sympathy evaporated. Williams closed the presentation with finality. "Federal charges will proceed." 2 days later, Elaine asked me to come to her house, the house that wasn't hers. She was weaker now, her voice a whisper against the hiss of oxygen. "I built this crusade on my father's stories. He told me your family ruined us. I believed him for 50 years. She confessed to spending thousands on falsified surveys, manipulating my sister, paying off my business partner. She thought she was correcting injustice, but the truth was simpler. Her father had lied, and she had wasted her final months destroying lives for ghosts. Her daughter, Tina, hovered nearby, exhausted. Mom's obsession cost me my job. I processed violations that never existed. Now I'm under investigation. I looked at them both, one dying, one disgraced, and realized revenge wasn't what I wanted. You can stay here until the end, I told Elaine. No eviction, no lawsuits against your daughter. Spend your time in peace. Her eyes filled. Why show me mercy after all I did? Because someone has to break the cycle. Elaine passed away quietly 6 weeks later. At her funeral, neighbors whispered about her downfall. But I saw only a woman who'd let resentment hollow her out until nothing remained. The state confirmed our ownership and adjusted boundaries to protect innocent families who'd bought homes in good faith. I donated half the land to conservation, keeping the house and the mineral rights Dad had secured decades earlier. My company slowly recovered. Chris was gone, but Rebecca stood by me, not just as my lawyer but as something more. Mara and I spoke again, haltingly at first, then with a fragile honesty that might one day mend the wound. One evening, I stood on the porch watching the mountains fade into dusk. For months, I'd been fighting a war I never asked for. But in the end, I realized the truth. The HOA hadn't just wanted my house. They wanted my legacy, my peace, my very identity. They almost succeeded. Almost.